Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Bankside Science podcast. This is episode kind of 70, 80, and I thought we'd look today at what happens when you have a cold. So, you know how the last podcast we talked about breathing and gas exchange, and we talked about the alveoli and all of those beautiful tubes inside your lungs. I thought we'd talk today in this episode about what happens when you get a cold. And there's quite a few of you in school at the moment with colds, not hay fever. People have got hay fever as well, but there's quite a few of you at the moment walking around with coughs and colds and sniffles. But you know that feeling, your throat starts to scratch and hurt a little bit, and your nose gets a bit bunged up, and you feel tired for no reason really. And maybe your head starts to ache as well. And then the next day you'll wake up and you know you've just got a blooming cold. We've all been there, we've all had colds, and you know, the average person gets 2 or 3 colds a year. That's hundreds, literally hundreds of colds over a lifetime. But here's something that most people have never really thought about, right? What is actually happening inside your body when you have a cold? What's making your nose run? Why do you feel so rubbish? And why does it go away on its own after a week? So, as usual, I'm Simon the Science Guy. I'm your host for this amazing Bankside Science podcast series, and this episode is called What Happens When You Have a Cold? So, first things first. A cold is caused by a virus. Now, we've been doing pathogens this week and last week in class, so the timing of this episode is pretty good. So a pathogen, remember, is anything that causes a communicable disease. And a communicable disease is something that you can catch from another person or organism or animal. So a cold is a virus, and it comes from the family of pathogens. It's not a bacteria, it's a virus. So that matters, and that matters a lot, because a lot of people think that antibiotics might help you when you've got a cold. But remember, antibiotics only work on bacteria. They do not work on viruses. They have nothing to do with viruses. So if you've ever been given antibiotics for a cold and they didn't help, that's because your immune system is doing the work, not the antibiotics. And believe it or not, there's actually over 200 different viruses that can give you a cold. 200 different viruses that can give you a cold. The most common one is called rhinovirus. So think of rhino, like the animal, and it comes from the Greek word for nose, not surprisingly, because the nose is where rhinoviruses like to set up their home. So the next kind of question is, how did it get there, Simon? So usually through your nose or mouth, or both. Someone sneezes near you or coughs near you, and those tiny, tiny droplets that are in the air from the cough or the sneeze carrying the virus float through the air. You breathe them in, or you touch a surface, a door handle, a phone, or someone's hand even, and that virus is then on or in you. And then in it goes. So the average person touches their face, are ready for this, about 20 times every hour without even realizing. You don't even know sometimes you're doing it because it's an unconscious movement, which is exactly how colds and viruses and all those kind of things spread really quickly and so easily. So once the virus is in your nose, it does something very clever and a little bit alarming. It attaches itself to the cells of the lining of your nose and throat. Then it gets inside those cells and completely hijacks them. Like, completely hijacks them. Think of it like this. A virus can't reproduce on its own, right? It needs your cells like a factory. It takes over your cells. It forces your cells to make thousands of copies of the virus. And then those copies burst out and go and infect even more cells because they look like your cells. And that's why viruses are really, really, really tricky to treat. They hide inside your cells. So it's a bit tricky for your immune system to recognize. And you can't just attack the virus without risking damage to the cells. And that's the problem with antiviral drugs, as in drugs that work on viruses. They are much harder to make than antibiotics for exactly that reason. Meanwhile, your immune system has spotted what's going on, and guess what? Your immune system is not a happy bunny at all. But here's something that surprises a lot of people. Most of your cold most of your cold symptoms, like a runny nose, a sore throat, feeling hot, tired, are not caused by the virus. They are caused by your immune system fighting back. When your immune system detects the virus, it sends white blood cells, lymphocytes, rushing to the area. The nose lining gets inflamed, red, swollen, and that's part of the attack. That's part of your immune system. Your body produces loads of extra mucus to try and flush the virus out. So when you've got loads and loads and loads of snot and tissues, that's because your nose and your immune system is trying to flush the virus out of your runny nose. And that soreness in your throat, that is inflammation too. Remember, inflammation means you've just got swollen. Your immune system starts increasing blood flow to the area, trying to fight the infection. Oh, and you get tired, don't you? You absolutely get tired. And that's your body, because your body is working really hard to fight the infection. It kind of never stops. And when you've got a temperature or a little fever, and that's your body actually turning up the heat on purpose, because most viruses don't like higher temperatures. So your body actually raises its own temperature. It's not the virus doing that. It's your own body trying to cook the virus. That's your own body's immune defense system. So when you feel rubbish during a cold, your body is actually doing its job brilliantly. In a way, you want to feel rubbish. You need to feel rubbish because that's your immune system doing its job. And of course, after a few days, something changes. You start to feel a bit better. The nose clears, your throat stops hurting, and the tiredness kind of stops. And why? Because your immune system has learnt how to beat that virus. And that's important. Your immune system has these cells, like I've just said, called lymphocytes. Lymphocytes, when they detect the virus, they start making antibodies. And we've talked about lymphocytes, antibodies, and antigens when we've talked about pathogens. Antibodies are special proteins that are shaped exactly, literally exactly, to fit the virus, like a lock and key mechanism. The antibodies latch onto the virus and mark it out for destruction, or even block them from getting into the cells in the first place. But it takes a few days to make enough antibodies. That's why you feel rubbish for a few days. And then before you get better, you're still feeling rubbish. And that's your immune system just playing catch up. But once it's up and running, the virus doesn't stand a chance because your immune system is just brilliant. But here's the really clever bit, and I love this about science. When the infection's over, some of your cells stay behind as memory cells. They remember the virus. If that exact same virus tries to infect you again, your immune system recognizes it immediately. It makes antibodies really quickly because it's remembered how to. It's remembered what the virus looks like so fast you won't even notice you've been infected, and you might not even get ill. That's probably why you only get chicken pox once in your life. Some of you may not have even had that yet, but when you do, your memory cells in your immune system remember it forever. The problem with colds, like I said before, is because there are 200 different types of viruses that cause them, your memory cells might just remember one. And then a slightly different virus comes along and your process has to start all over again. So, and that's that bit kind of done. So the two questions people always tend to ask is, why is there no cure for the common cold? And what about, now lots of people say, feed a cold, starve a fever. So let's look at the first one. So why isn't there a common cold, a cure for the common cold? Because there's no single virus to cure. Because there's 200 different viruses, making a vaccine for one virus just would be rubbish because you've got 199 to have problems with. So there may well never be a cure for the common cold. And what about the other thing I said?